Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fit Life Orange County podcast. And I'm so excited to tee up today's guest. Before I do, want to give you a friendly reminder, give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube, write us an awesome review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing content for you for free and really affect the health and wellness of our Orange County residents in a positive way. So that all said, so excited to introduce my dear friend and one of my physicians, Dr. Asher Milgrom. And I've been working with him since the end of 2014. In today's episode, you're going to learn about integrative health medicine, about how to avoid being trapped in by, the big pharma, if you will, and really the secrets of ozone therapy, which had an incredible impact on my life, an incredible impact of others' lives, specific to being able to beat and overcome viruses. So without further ado, Dr. Asher Milgrom, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Fit Life Orange County, a show dedicated to busy men and women focused on taking back control of their fitness and their lives with the help from ideas and programs from local experts here in Orange County. Here are your hosts, Bryce Henson and Jake Stewart.
Welcome back, friends, to another amazing episode of the podcast. And I'm so excited to introduce Mr. Dr. Asher Milgrom. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi. Well, it's good to be here. It's been, we have been conspiring to do this for years. It's good to finally get it together.
It's been a minute, but before I ask you my first question, I just want to kind of set the tone for the audience. There's a lot of awesome guests that we have on the show, but Dr. Asher is a very special guest to me. I've been under his care since 2014. We were just talking offline, and specifically ozone therapy has been a game changer for my immune system and really my health and wellness. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But Doctor, I want to kick off this podcast just with some insight of, can you give us the high level 30,000 foot view? How did you get in healthcare and medicine? And really, what's the origin story and the big purpose that you have, you and your wife, running AMA Skincare here in Orange County? And I guess you have a site in Los Angeles as well, but Irvine is where I typically see you.
Well, a lot of doctors, my wife included, usually have the notion early on that they want to be a doctor. And they go through high school and college with that in mind, of being pre-med, et cetera, et cetera. They have some example in their life, an uncle, a dad, a mom, or whoever that is the footsteps they're following. There was nothing like that in my family. There were no doctors in my family, and I didn't have a particular interest in medicine either throughout college. Actually, I wanted to be like Jacques Cousteau. I wanted to be an underwater researcher, and go around the world in the Calypso and visit all these amazing places and go diving very deep, and that's what, until I realized that, now in the world there's only room for one Jacques Cousteau. And so if I wanted to be in science, I had to find something else that I could do that would keep me in science and keep me in the front end of exploration, because it's exploring that I like. I like trying to figure out what's next. And in that sense, my wife and I also specialize in different parts of our practice. And I guess we can talk about this later. She is the medical director. She's hands-on with the patients every day. I'm the science director, and I'm figuring out, or doing my best to figure out, okay, given the science is where it is today, and we're seeing the following complications or the following symptoms or the following illnesses, what could be next? And I'm thinking about what's next, and she's perfecting what is. And together we divide and conquer, so to speak. And that is one of the things that does differentiate us. We have a full-on research part of what we do here. And because of that, we generally are able to stay ahead of the curve. That makes it exciting for us, and really worthwhile time for our patients to come here, because we have what everyone else does, plus the new things that are just coming out or just developing, or we may be a part of the team that's developing it. So that's how we run our practice. But how did I get into medicine was your practice. So Alice and I, my partner is also my wife. and we married 32 years ago. And at that time, I had already decided to get out of medicine for a while, at least. I had gotten ill and was in a coma for a little while. And when I came out of the coma, I looked at my future and realized that the day-to-day provision of medicine, if it's, say you're a pediatrician or you're a neurologist or whatever it is you are, you're going to see the same things over and over and over again, day after day after day. And I looked ahead to my future and realized that was not a good future for me. That if I was going to do medicine, then I needed to do things that were new. I needed to be part of the group of physicians or scientists that are looking ahead to what could be next. Evaluate, the efficacy of what we're doing now, and then look ahead to see what's next. And so that is really how my wife and I came together on this. And then at that time, she was the director of pediatric trauma in the big ER center, the big trauma center here in Orange County. At the time, it was called Westmed. And so she was dealing with gangbangers every day, every night, scared the crap out of me. And at a certain point, she was burning out. 8-9 years in the ER, pediatric ER, was taking a toll on her. So we decided to look to do something different. And to do something different meant integrative medicine. Now, integrative medicine wasn't even a term that was used 30 years ago. We may have been the first to use it, but we didn't realize that at the time. And that's basically that we will look at any protocol that works and that is safe and that has clinical efficacy, whether it comes from some ancient traditional medicine from India or native this or native that, or whether it's something that was just invented last week at Mayo Clinic, right, left, up, down, sky, earth, whatever it is. If it has clinical relevance and is safe to use, of course, then we're interested. We're interested in figuring out how to integrate that protocol along with other things that we already do in order to get a better clinical outcome. And that's what we're interested in, better clinical outcomes. And our approach is an integrative approach. Now, the other half of our name, integrative medicine, is regenerative. So it's integrative and regenerative medicine. Traditionally, the way allopathic Western medicine is practiced in the West, and certainly here in the United States, is that the symptoms are looked at, and then some drug is pulled off the shelf that's going to suppress those symptoms or deal with those symptoms. So if you have an organ someplace in your body that's unhappy, that's giving you some symptoms, there's going to be a drug that will suppress those symptoms so you can function. But we're really not interested in doing that. If you have an unhappy organ someplace, what we want to do is figure out how to cause that organ to regenerate youth, to regenerate vitality, to regenerate its own tissues so that it's functioning properly, so you don't have those symptoms to begin with. Just dealing with the symptoms just perpetuates a lifelong jail sentence of being on drugs constantly, popping pills all day long. The average 65-year-old in the United States, I believe, is on something like 15 different medications daily. It's a huge number like that. I don't know exactly what the number is, but it's high, and that's not health. That's not health. That's revenue for big pharma. And I am also, among other things, a devout capitalist. I think revenue is a wonderful thing. But I don't think in pursuit of health that getting people on lots and lots of pills that oftentimes require additional pills to deal with the symptoms that the first set of pills caused, and then a third set of pills to deal with the symptoms the second set of pills caused. I mean, that's what's going on. I don't think that's a good idea. And generally speaking, people who practice integrative medicine shy away from that. They're looking for a solution to the origin of the problem and not just dealing with the symptoms. So does that adequately answer your question?
I think that's a pretty good overview. And I do want to confirm that you're Dr. Alice, your wife and partner, she's an MD, and then you're a DO, a doctor of osteopathic medicine.
So no, I'm actually a PhD. So I went through an MD PhD program. I was one of those combined ones. She went through a traditional MD program. And at the very end of my MD PhD program, my last year, that's the year that I ended up in that coma that I mentioned earlier. And when I came out of the coma, I was very disoriented and I had to kind of rethink my life. And at that point, I took some time on to rethink my life and decided that the research part of medicine, I was better suited for that. And so I focused just on the PhD side of science and not the clinical application side of the science. And so that's, again, how we conquer and divide, or divide and conquer, my wife and I. I stay on the research and she does the clinical.
Yeah, and that you do an incredible job at that. So now I want to transition and kind of just talk a little bit about the common kind of treatments that you offer and provide your clientele. And I want to storytell just a little bit, which I know I kind of opened up with. But back in 2014, actually a few years even earlier, I started noticing cold sores on my mouth. And a long time ago, they were aggressive, they were painful, they hurt. And ultimately, it's a derivative of the herpes virus, which is very, very common. The vast majority of the population has it. But from what I understand in my research, as I found your practice, only a very small percentage or a small percentage of the population actually develops the virus into a cold sore. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know really anything about it. So I just did a Google search. And as it turns out, living in Southern California in Orange County, you are one of the leading practices, not only in Orange County, not even in California, but also I would even say in the world. So really was interested, took a look into, connecting with you and setting up a consultation. And you really turned me on to something called ozone therapy. And really what ozone therapy is, integrative medicine, holistic medicine. And it's helped me so much in this journey. And now not only do I use it to combat if there's ever a cold sore, but also just for general health and wellness, usually about 3 to 4 times a year, I'll do a 10 pass, and I could just see such big benefits. So would love to open up, Dr. Asher, for you, one, to talk about ozone from your perspective, but then also two, some other, very common or very profound treatments that you help with your clients at AMA.
Okay, so ozone is one of those things that we integrated, right? Integrative medicine. We found a protocol that not many people knew much about, protocols having to do with ozone. And we studied that and realized there's great value in it. We found people who knew a lot more about it than we do. That's one of the pretty cool things about medicine, is that if you look hard enough, you'll almost always find somebody who knows so much more about something than you know. And if they are of a generous spirit, then you can go pick their brain, spend some time with them, follow them around in their clinic, see how they do things. Shadow, we call it. We have a lot of doctors who shadow us and learn new things, and we often are shadowing somebody else to learn new things. And that's how the integrative community supports one another. We don't get a lot of support from the outside, right? Insurance companies don't pay for the things that we do. The government basically, if it can outlaw things that we do, they would, but oftentimes they simply can't because the things that we do work. But we don't get support from anything else out there in the industry, so the support comes from one another. And so the integrative medical industry is a pretty tight one. On Friday, for instance, we had a young lady come in with her dad who had some kidney transplants and then just recently was diagnosed with some cancer, some very unusual cancers, and they wanted to get started with treatments right away. But again, they didn't want traditional, chemotherapy, which is devastating to go through, or radiology, also devastating to go through. Your healthy body takes an enormous beating while they're chasing down the malignant cells. And so there were two physicians that I could refer them to that specialize in an integrative approach to oncology, which is a much healthier way to go. It doesn't beat up the rest of your body. You don't lose your hair. You're not sick in bed for weeks at a time because of the chemo. Pretty much, for most, they go through their lives as if nothing is happening while these integrative treatments are causing the necessary healing to go on and supporting the immune system to combat the cancer. It's really pretty amazing. But anyhow, the point is that both of these physicians were out of town, and they weren't going to be back for a week. And I wasn't sure what I could do with this patient since I had never dealt with this situation before. Oncology is not our primary focus. So I called one of the docs up on his cell phone. He was on vacation someplace. He called me back 3 hours later and gave me a protocol to use for this patient over the next week until he gets back. So that's the kind of thing that you can expect in the integrative world, like a kind of collaboration between physicians who really care, and will leave their cell phone on during a vacation so they can pick up a call like the one that I had in order to get this guy started on something to prepare him for what would happen when the physician comes back from his vacation. So that's the kind of environment we work in, and your patients should know that they can expect that. They can expect that kind of collaboration and that kind of mutual support between a group of physicians that are looking at their particular symptomology, their particular condition, and that alone should give your listeners a lot of comfort to know that they're not alone with one doctor who thinks they know the answer. They're usually going to be their case is going to be discussed with numerous, because we're always talking to each other. So that's number one. Number two, our practice is split up into two different divisions. We have an aesthetic division, and we have a integrative and regenerative division. The aesthetic division deals with skin, taking away blemishes from skin and wrinkles and sagging and some skin cancers and acne and scars and all sorts of things. And those patients will range from teenagers all the way to 80 years old. I mean, some people come in and they're all saggy at 80 years old. They got the waddle down here, they got the turkey neck, or whatever it is, and they want that tightened up. And lasers are often the best way to go about doing that. So 25 years ago, the first thing that Dr. P and I decided to do was specialize in laser medicine. At the time, there were only 3 legitimate or well-known laser manufacturers at that time. So we got involved in many research plans or many research projects, working with those manufacturers of medical lasers, plus a bunch of others. And now I'm happy to say that since we were so intensely involved in the research side of things, not just the clinical, a lot of our brains are pretty much in every laser that's out there today. And the results that we can get from skin is pretty amazing. In case all of you guys are wondering, looking at Bryce, he's actually 93 years old, and look at his skin.
It's thanks to you, Doctor, and your awesome team.
So skin is very responsive, and we have like 30 different lasers, and we were involved in certifying most of them for the FDA and all that stuff, and we really enjoy doing that, and the patients love it, and the patients will come in regularly for it.
What's up, my friend? Coach Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the owner of Mission Viejo Fit Body. But what many people don't know is that I began my journey as a fitness transformation story. You see, circuit training and nutrition coaching absolutely changed my life after being overweight with a diet of mainly fast food in my late teens. Now, upon my fitness transformation in early 2007, yes, I gained a much better physique as I was overweight and lacked lean muscle. But way more than burning fat and building lean muscle, I increased my confidence, my energy, and my vibrancy to live life. And it's for these reasons that many people join our boot camp. In fact, with our Ultimate Transformation Program, we guarantee that you'll lose at least 15 pounds in 12 weeks, or your program is free until you do. Now go ahead and visit our website at missionviejo.com integrativefitbody.com. Now, thanks, and back to the show.
But the reason we started with aesthetic medicine first is because we have found out that, generally speaking, people take their health for granted, but they don't take their looks for granted. So they won't think about their health until they get sick, but they'll think about their looks every time they pass a mirror or pass a reflective, window in the storefront. They walk by, go, ooh, and they're checking themselves out. So we figured, what, they'll come, if we're really good at this, they'll come for their beauty, but they'll stay for their health. And that's sort of how it worked out. Initially, we were mainly just aesthetic medicine. Now we're probably 60% integrative and regenerative medicine, and only 40% or 35% aesthetic medicine. It changed a lot during COVID. People were locked at home, so they didn't care about their zits suddenly, but they showed up here because they were sick. And we treated well over 1,500 people during COVID. And I know that's not the subject matter here, and I have to be careful what I say here. I do have to be careful because, the reality is, how we treated patients didn't follow the narrative, and we got much better results than the narrative, the establishment, the government would say were possible. We treated over 1,500 patients. Only 2 ended up needing to go to the hospital. Everyone survived. And only 2 needed any hospitalization at all because we didn't catch it early enough. But COVID, like any other coronavirus, you catch it early, is really easily treatable. And already saying that, I'm sure the red lights are going off someplace back in DC, and somehow this is going to be considered misinformation. But, the data speaks for themselves. And for those people who are still concerned about coronavirus, the best place for information about coronavirus is the flccc.net or .org. I think it's
COVIDcriticalcare.com
or COVIDcriticalcare.com. And certainly the FLCCC is also known by that. And that's Dr. Merrick and Dr. Corey. They are the 2 most published ever in history physicians in critical care. So they know more about critical care than pretty much the rest of the world combined. And they're the founders of that website, and they keep everyone up to date on the research and what's happening, what they're finding, ways of treating. They're not anti-vaxxers, and, they're not crazy that way. They have their issues with vaccines, as we all should. These are experimental, these vaccines. And a lot of the data about the results of the vaccines are still the government's not transparent about it. But at any rate, so again, 60% of our practice move towards the integrative and regenerative medicine, and that's where you spend your time when you come. You're in one of our IV rooms, getting an IV, or getting ozone, or getting lots of the other kind of things that we do. And that room is a lot of fun, by the way. It's a pretty big room. There's 10 to 12 different people in there at a time getting treatments. And there's a lot of laughter coming out of that room as people are getting better. People come in oftentimes with massive brain fog, whether it's from Lyme, or it's COVID, or it's long haul COVID, or they have an injury from the COVID vaccine or something else, their EBV virus, or whatever other kind of virus. There's so many viruses out there, but their brains are basically shut down from the inflammation. They have massive brain fog. In the middle of the treatment, boom, the lights go on. And they'll report something like, "Oh my God, it's like I'm awake again. I'm me. Suddenly I'm me again. I can think." And that will often happen in the very first treatment. And it is exciting for everyone in the room to watch that happen. And it pretty much happens to everyone. Not everyone gets it the first time. Sometimes it's the second or third time. but these treatments are remarkable, and the results are spectacular, and you've been through them yourself.
I certainly have, and that's why I sing your praises and ultimately Ozone just praises for the health, the vibrancy, the increase in my immune system, and also to the other treatments that you have. So can you dive in a little bit more, because that's what I have the most insight on, just to give our audience a little bit of understanding what it is in the case that they haven't heard it like I hadn't heard it back in 2004.
Okay. We also have a lot of videos about ozone in addition to all the ones you've put out. So if you send them to our website, there's a whole bunch of videos there on all the different ways we use ozone. So oxygen we breathe is O2. We have an oxygen atom and another oxygen atom, and they are bound together by a double bond. Okay, so that's O2 that we're breathing. Ozone is O3. If you add a third not molecule, but atom of oxygen. So now you have 3. And basically that third oxygen is super, super, super energized. It kind of doesn't want to stay there. The O2 oxygen molecule is a very stable, very happy molecule all by itself. And if you stick a third one on there, it kind of doesn't want to be there. So that last oxygen and its electrons are highly energized, extremely eager to jump off and make something happen and do something. And those electrons are the source of all the energy in our body. Every cell in your body, and you have about 100 trillion cells in your body, produces energy in the form of something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is the molecular fuel that runs all the biochemical reactions of all of the cells in their body. The ATP is made inside the mitochondria of the cell. And maybe I'll send you some pictures, or, James, you can send some pictures that you can stick up and show people what we're talking about. So that mitochondria, okay, uses the electrons off the oxygen we're breathing in order to make ATP, which is the fuel for every single cell in our body. Okay, so therefore cells that need more energy are going to have more mitochondria and make more ATP. So let me give you an example, because these numbers, if people's mouths are closed right now, their mouths are going to be open and their jaws are going to be hanging on the floor here in a minute. The average cell in your body produces about 20,000 biochemical reactions per second. 20,000 per second. And every single one of those biochemical reactions requires energy. You got to put energy into the system for some kind of chemical reaction to occur. Well, where does all that energy comes from? All that energy comes from ATP. The ATP is like the gas you put in your car. It's the energy that gets burned up. It's the fuel that gets burned up, okay, that's utilized by these biochemical reactions that will then produce something. And all of those ATPs are made by mitochondria. So the average mitochondria in your cells in your body, anywhere, from a few hundred to a few thousand mitochondria in an individual cell. So if you already have 100 trillion cells in your body and you're multiplying that by 100 or 1,000 or a few thousand, you can imagine how many mitochondria are in your body. Now, of all of the tissues in your body, which organ is the most metabolically active? It's your brain, it's your neurology. So those should actually have more mitochondria because they need more ATP, because they're more metabolically active. They're doing more of these biochemical reactions per second than any other cells in your body. And as a matter of fact, neurons will often have between 2 to 3 million mitochondria per cell. Your body is a huge generator of energy. And I guess we could go back to the Matrix movie, right? Copper top. Yeah, our bodies make huge amounts of energy. And it's those mitochondria that are doing that. And anything that you can do, therefore, in medicine to support the health and well-being of mitochondria is going to help your body. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly what ozone does in the case of people who are suffering from a whole variety of conditions, not the least of which are infections of chronic viruses. So whether it's HIV or whether it's EBV or whether it's COVID or whatever other kind of virus a person may have, the chances are really good that the mitochondria in those person's cells are not happy. These are mitochondria that are suffering in one way or another from the presence of that virus. And when you put ozone inside a person, that third molecule, that third atom of oxygen that we talked about, that has a couple of electrons on there that are just dying to do something, they're jumping right off in the mitochondria. They're joining something called the electron transport chain, which is this machinery inside your mitochondria that's churning out ATP, and it'll boost your ATP production hugely through the roof. And that's why people in the middle of a session putting ozone in their blood, and there's special devices that do this. And we have videos for that too. I guess you guys will just collaborate and get some of those videos. And that's why people feel their energy coming up so quickly. But again, more importantly, it's not a temporary feel good. You know, as your mitochondria are getting healthier and they have more energy, the cell has more energy to protect itself and do what it needs to do to deal with whatever infection it has. And so it's not some drug, you know, an antiviral or an antibacterial that we're getting from a pharmaceutical company. We're actually boosting the immune system, which is dependent again on ATP, dependent on mitochondria functioning well, to boost the immune system so that the immune system can do what it's supposed to do and will do if you supply it with the necessary resources to heal yourself from whatever it is you're carrying around, and in some cases, you know, the herpes simplex. And you're right about the herpes simplex, by the way. Over 80% of the people on the planet have herpes. Okay, so it's you know, you can get a little kiss on the cheek from grandma and voila, you know, you got herpes. So and it does happen, it can happen that easily. So that and so many of the simplex families, there's many simplex viruses. The ozone is extremely effective in helping a patient heal from that. Some never have to come back after a series of ozone therapies, and some are a little bit proactive like you are, and you'll come back to the office every few months just to stay ahead of it. Generally speaking, staying ahead of the curve is a really good idea. Staying ahead of the wave. If you're a surfer and the wave passes you, you're dead on the water. If you can get ahead of the wave and get up on that wave and surf your way into better health, that's the thing to do. So it's a good idea to plan your health, and have protocols or different things that you engage in on a regular basis, like you do, Bryce, to stay as healthy as you obviously are, looking at you. And ozone is one of those things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that insight. And that is so interesting, because I first learned of it, as we just talked about, because of the cold sores on my lips. But it's interesting. You talked about like the funness and the connectivity of, the regeneration of room. I always am asking, other people that I'm with that are sitting next to me, why they use ozone. And it's just a wide variety of reasons, wide varieties from Lyme's disease to, all other types of viruses. So I definitely just want to take the time to kind of get some insight there, because it's certainly been a huge game changer in my life. And I know it has for other people too.
Right. And by the way, in case you were wondering, ozone was discovered over 200 years ago. And Tesla, our famous Nicholas Tesla, was one of the first people in this country to actually play around with ozone as a medicinal subject. He actually had ozonated oil, which he sold as a medicinal, product, and we still use it right here on the shelf. It's not his anymore. It's, we have other people who make it for us, but you can infuse ozone into oils like olive oil and use it on your skin, use it on a cut. The Department of Defense, I know, um, uh, has some research projects where they're looking to equip every soldier out in the field with ozonated oil, or at least the medics. So if they get lacerated out in the field or shot up or whatever, you just fill that laceration with ozonated oil to keep it from becoming infected, and to put enough energy into the tissue that's been damaged that it can already start healing. The healing starts very, very early when you engage it with ozone. So again, there's 1,000 things ozone is good for. Every basic illness that you can think of, the body needs energy in order to combat it, and ozone is giving the body at the cellular level energy. And of course, ozone also directly kills bacteria, directly kills, the spirochete that makes Lyme, that is Lyme, directly kills viruses of all sorts. So it not only supports the healthy body by giving it energy so that it can fight pathogens, it also directly, attacks the pathogens as well.
Well, thank you for that insight, and I'm a huge, huge believer, and honestly, just scratching the surface of all the benefits that ozone can provide. So, on that note, Doctor, you've been so gracious with your time. I have one last question, if you will, and really just untapped parting piece of wisdom. And actually, it's going to be a two-part question. We've talked a little about some of the symptoms or some of the issues that people, come to AMA for. We talked about the two sides, the aesthetic, but also the regenerative, which is how I initially found practice. The first part of the question, I want to give the opportunity for any other, typical symptom or problem that people have that you can treat. So that way, if someone's listening to this and maybe they don't have cold sores in their mouth and maybe they don't have Lyme disease or some sort of, virus that we talked about, but what are some other, symptoms and issues that people find themselves at AMA's door? So I'd love to kind of give you the opportunity to kind of showcase just high level, how you can help our community. And then secondly, what would be your last piece of parting advice for someone who's interested in really taking that next step, reaching out to AMA, but for whatever reason, they haven't, done any sort of regenerative medicine, or they're scared, they're nervous, that little voice inside their mind, because they've typically been used to being drugged up on pharmaceuticals and all that. What would your parting piece of wisdom to that person be to really take that next step and come see you at AMA?
Great question. We get the question a lot, actually, from patients who are sitting and getting treatments, or patients who walk in the door, or this may be the 10th or 15th time they've walked in the door over the last few years. And the question sometimes it comes in the beginning of our relationships, and sometimes, again, many years into the relationship. But basically, the question is, as you put it, what makes you different? Why is it when I walk into your office, I feel something different? And we get that a lot. People walk into our office and they say, wow, this is like no other medical practice I've ever been in. And it's not the art on the walls, though the art is fun, and the art comes mainly from our patients who we trade for. Lots of famous artists have showed up here over the years. But they say it feels different on the inside, not just circumstantially to the way we've structured the facility itself, but it feels different. And the reason is, I believe that Alice and I, Dr. Pien, and I have a deep and abiding respect and awe for the unfathomable complexity and miracle of our physiology. Whether an individual realizes it or not, we are walking around inside a miracle. I mean, I gave you a few numbers a little while ago. You have 100 trillion cells, and every one of them is doing 20,000 different biochemical reactions per second, for which they need thousands, if not millions, of mitochondria to make all the ATP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And every one of those 20,000 reactions happens in proper synergy and in proper sequence with all the other ones in order to produce viable life. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, it is a miracle. It is an absolute miracle. And inside that miracle is extraordinary wisdom. And in our belief, it's God's wisdom. God created the universe and created us, and the wisdom of the universe, from edge of the universe to the other edge of the universe, as big as the universe is also contained in the tip of your little pinky finger. So right in there, every secret of physics and biophysics and whatever physics is running the universe, is also exists in your little tiny pinky finger. And if you have respect for that, and you're looking to engage a relationship with people's physiology at that level, boy, it is incredibly humbling and incredibly exciting. And because of that respect for people's physiology, and recognizing, therefore, that everyone's physiology is going to be different one from another. No one's going through exactly the same things at the same time. Okay, that therefore you have to look at every patient differently. I say this to my kids. I have 4 kids, Daddy, who do you love more? Well, we love you all the same differently. That's what my wife and I tell our kids. We love you all the same differently. We love all our patients the same, and we respect their physiology the same differently, because they're going through different things, and therefore the protocol that is right for them needs to be customized. So starting from that deep, abiding respect for the unfathomable miracle of a person's physiology, and the wisdom in there, and recognizing that the body is smarter than all of us put together, we need to engage a person's physiology, to poke around, basically, to ask you questions, to ask the patient questions, to figure out what is going on that they're not feeling right. And ultimately, it's a functional question. You ask what brings people in. It can be completely different things for different people, depending on what's going on in their lives. Some people, it's a loss of energy. Some people, it's poor sleep. Some people, it's poor digestion. For other people, it's the brain fog. For other people, it isn't an infection. It is an infection. They're sick. They have COVID. They have this, whatever it is. And it's a lot more simple and obvious what they have. For other people, it's a neurodegenerative, degeneration. They're developing loss of memory, loss of cognitive functions. They can't remember where they put their keys, and the worries of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and MS come up, etc. Well, we've learned along the way that the causes for these things are different for different people. For a lot of people, Parkinson's and MS is because of an oral infection. They had a tooth pulled years ago that didn't properly heal, or they had a root canal, that was not done properly and is infected and has been infected for years. And it's seeding endotoxins into their brain that's causing inflammation in their brain, which is causing the symptoms of something that looks very much like MS, but is not. It's an infection in their mouth. And if you clean up the infection in their mouth, voila, the MS goes away. It can be that simple. And, of course, we send those patients to biological dentists that know how to chase those infections down. So, boy, I tell you, what things do people come in here for? Just about everything. And again, if it's something that's out of our wheelhouse, we'll know, hopefully, who to refer them to within the community of integrative physicians, who hopefully will have a much greater specialization and experience in that particular area that we don't, which is the reason for the referral to them. I don't know, does that answer your question, Bryce?
That certainly does. And I guess the follow-up on that to finish us off, speaking of a client that wants to reach out, where can they find you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? Would love to provide that contact information so they can reach out.
Right. So there's a number of different URLs that we have. The easiest one to remember is the one having to do with skincare, because, again, everyone's interested in skincare. So it's simply, www.amaskincare.com. Okay, AMA is Alpha Mike Alpha, and then skincare.com. And that's the easiest way to find us. You can go to AMA Regenerative Medicine, but those are longer to type out, and AMA Skincare is just fine. We do very little social media, very, very little. And by the way, we do no advertising. We don't spend not even one dime on marketing and advertising. It's all word of mouth here, and has been that way for many, many, many years. And we do videos, lots of videos that are educational videos we sell nothing on those videos. We're just educating people into the physiological reality of the condition that they're experiencing, and then what can be done about it. And these are not 3-minute videos. Initially, the advice we got from everyone, it's 3 minutes. If you can't capture their attention in 3 minutes, they're gone. Well, if we found differently, that if they're suffering from a particular condition or a symptom that's hurting them or really affecting their life in a negative way, they have more attention span than 3 minutes. They want some answers. They want to get educated. And so many of our videos are 20 minutes long, 25 minutes long, and we have tens of millions of views. Okay, and they're not all from our patients. These views are all over the world. Obviously, we exist in one little city in Southern California, and people from Timbuktu aren't showing up here, but we teach in the video, not just for the patient, but also what the patient needs to look for in a physician that might be able to do the protocols that we do. So there's a whole lot of teaching in there, and we encourage physicians who want to try these protocols to give us a call with the patient that might have contacted them who's too far to travel to come to us, and we'll walk them through the protocols and see if we can't help them achieve a successful outcome many thousands of miles away.
Stand-up doctor you are, stand-up practice. And before we wrap today, Dr. Asher, I just want to thank you for being on the show. You've definitely had a very big impact in my life, whether you know it or not. It's been a godsend basically meeting you in 2014, not just because of the virus issue that I had that you helped overcome, but also too just the breadth of knowledge, and also too just the way I feel by taking a proactive approach and really coming to your center every quarter, once every 3 months, so a few times a year, and it's really just been a big impact and a big difference in my health. So I want to thank you and your awesome wife, Dr. Alice Pien, for being on the show, but really your big impact, not only to Orange County, but also the world. So I'm a huge fan, and I cannot recommend you enough. So again, thank you so much for being on today.
I'm honored. I'm truly honored. I will say one thing in closing. It is, every now and then I need a doctor too, right? And I will tell you the same method that I use to find the right doctor to help me out with whatever is going on. And I can kind of sum it up this way. I don't look for doctors who are impressed with all that they know, because all what they know is from research that was conducted usually years ago. I'm much more inclined to work with a doctor that is excited about what they're learning. I don't think it's possible to really be a good physician and not be humble. How can you not be humbled working with this miracle that we call our bodies in this universe that is so magnificently put together so that we can be here. When you're looking for a physician and you're talking to them, try to get a feel. Are they humble? Are they excited about what they're learning? Do they have new things to share with you about, this is what we used to do years ago and now we're doing it this way, and boy, we're finding things different and better than that, or they just want to slap a protocol on you and kick you out the door. So, COVID changed a lot of things, but that's one area where, unfortunately, I think that our industry has sort of failed us. Doctors stopped thinking about how to treat their patients and just slap the protocol on them and poke them with a vaccine and send them out the door, or didn't do anything. But that's COVID. That's a whole different story.
That's a topic for another episode. But in all seriousness, so I think that's sage advice for reviews at home. And I just cannot recommend you and your practice enough from the philosophy perspective and just from the results perspective. As you kind of indicated, Dr. Asher, at the very beginning of the interview, been trying to get this in the books for quite some time. And it's just because of the passion that I have for you, the passion I have for health and fitness. And I knew I really wanted to get your message out to our local community and also to our world community. So with that all said, I want to thank you again. And audience, I know you got a ton of value. Assuming you did, please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, write us an amazing review in iTunes, and drop your biggest comment or your biggest takeaway in the comments, because it really can help someone else in need that could be a great patient for Dr. Asher and Dr. Pien that would help their life exponentially. So that's all for today. See you in the next episode. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Asher.